I remember it was Phil Bentham, the referee at the time. He came in and he had a word with me and he said, look, we've had reports that they're going to storm the field and they're going to get to you, and if they do, you just run off and you get and we'll abandon the game. And I was like, wow, this is too far.
Well, Kev Brown, thank you for coming in. I thought it would be a good opportunity to sit down and talk about your career a little bit and how you kind of progressed through it into the way that you finished and then into retirement. I want to kind of start right at the beginning and your kind of first exposure to rugby league, how you found yourself in the game.
Yeah, I was a St Helens lad. A lot of people thought I was a Wigan lad, but I grew up in Airdrie, and the local newspaper came through the door one day and it was a St Helens Star. And in there was an open night at Pilkington's Rex, and there was going to be some superstars from St Helens down there. I think it was Alan Hunt and Anthony Sullivan. So my dad asked me, did I want to go down? There's some celebrities going down, and I went down, picked a rugby ball up, and I'd never seen a game, never played a game. I think I was about 8 years old, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. It was like doing something. I kept expecting people to tell me off for running in and hitting people, but they encouraged it and said you'd done well. So I don't think my mum was too happy at first. She thought a little lad was going to get battered around, but no, I absolutely loved it. And Pilks Rex was a really good club just around the corner from St Helens, Knowsley Road at the time, and that was the start of my journey.
Was there a point that you kind of, a moment of realisation where you thought, oh, maybe I should take this quite seriously because it could be a big part of my life, it could be a career?
Whether it was blind optimism or not, I'm not sure, but from picking it up, from picking a ball up and watching my first couple of games and the atmosphere and the brutality of the sport, I just wanted to be a rugby player. So there was no moment where I thought, I'm that good that I can be a rugby player. And I always used to think, am I going to be good enough? Will my dream come true? Am I going to be big enough? Am I going to be quick enough? Because there's so much negativity along the way, and there's so many people who will tell you you're not going to do it. And I remember at a point where I was about 12 or 13, I'd been a pretty good player in the community, and then I got to about 12 or 13 and I was just getting run over by absolute man-child monsters. And it was probably at that point where I had my biggest doubt that I'm not going to be big enough. And it was probably speaking to my dad, and he said, look, that it happens at this period where you just got to stick it out, learn other things, and that's, I was probably really lucky that I didn't grow too quick, because learning how to unlock defences without running over the top of someone was a big part of my junior development, and ultimately that was the way that I played the professional game, because I was never the biggest or the quickest. It was trying to be the speed of thought and thinking of other ways of putting people in space and unlocking defences that was my biggest asset.
Those kind of make or break years, I guess, right up to the point when you made your professional debut and you were kind of essentially putting yourself on the market to prove to people you were good enough to do this for a living. What were they like?
It was difficult. It was really. I was a Wigan fan. I went down and watched my first couple of games at Wigan. It was actually at Central Park, so I used to stand on the terraces and I used to love it. And I always wanted to play for Wigan. And I remember Mike Rush was my obviously the main guy at St Helens now was my town team coach under 14s and 15s, and he was trying to sign me at Saints, but Wigan didn't really have any interest in me then. But I waited anyway, and then when I was 16, I'd just played for England on tour for the under 16s, and a scout rang my dad up and said, "Look, we'd be interested." And I didn't even look what money it was. I can't remember what money it was. I wasn't bothered. I'd have paid them to come down, and I went to Wigan. But that was really difficult because I was one of the first St Helens lads that was going in that Wigan environment, and Wigan had so many good players that it was quite daunting at first. And lots of new friends. All my team had gone to St Helens and playing there, and I was a bit of a Judas because we're from Saints, but I was a Wigan fan. And then that was where I met Dennis Betts. Dennis had just he was just retiring actually, and he was our coach. And I'd played really well in the under-17s, and Dennis said, "Look, it's my last ever game. It's my testimonial game. We're playing Widnes, and I want you to play in it." So I played on the wing, and I'll go back to what I said before. There was a few moments that I thought I'm out my depth. I remember, I think it was Julian O'Neill putting a kick up and me standing under it, and I caught the ball and I got hit by Adam Hughes, who was a giant centre for Widnes, and he hit me on the, I'm sure it was the 20-metre line, and he took me back into the dead ball line, and I thought, this is too much for me. But that was the start, and once I got a taste, I thought I want more of that. We won the game, and it was Dennis's last ever game, and I've still one of my very good friends now, Dennis, and it sort of snowballed from there really quickly up from being in the system to playing first team and playing first team regular. It just seemed to happen overnight because of the amount of injuries. I remember playing against Saints in the Good Friday debut. There was probably 10 players that should have played before me. There was an injury crisis in the first team, but just bizarrely by chance there was an injury crisis in the A team. So it was to the academy players, and myself and Dave Allen and Luke Robinson all got our chance, and I really don't know how we won that game. I've spoke to Scully a few times, and I think if we'd have played that game 1,000 times, that would have been the only game that we'd have won. We just played with energy and passion, and probably because they didn't really know anything about us, that we got the win. But that was how it just transpired so quick, and I was just fortunate. I was probably the last man standing.
That you mentioned, obviously, that was a Good Friday derby. Came at the beginning of your career, but playing in those games, those environments, obviously the famous Skullthorpe versus Farrell final, you'll forever kind of be in the background of that shot. That must be a real career high moment, even though it came so early on. Just being involved in those.
Yeah, well, it is looking back. At the time, it was another one. Oh my God, what am I doing in the middle of these absolute monsters? Back in the day, if there was a fight, the coaches used to say, "Look, if there's a fight, you're all in. It's one in all in." That was the saying, and I was probably 65, 70 kilos wet through. And it kicked off before that. It kicked off at half time with Danny Skullthorpe and Sean Long. And I remember there was a guy called Dom Fuanati. He was stinging for a fight that game, and then anyway, it was Terry Newton and John Wilkins started fighting, and Farrell and Skullthorpe were going in there to split it up, but then locked horns and it was on. And I was just as I was running into the melee, I thought, what am I going to do here? And everyone was so big, so I found Sean Long and pulled Sean Long out, and that was it. Dom Fuanati came over and gave me a clip, give Stephen Wilde a clip. But yeah, it's one of the most watched pieces of rugby league in the last probably 20 or 30 years. And I coach the kids now, and they're all still take the mick out of me whenever they put in rugby league fights. That one comes up, and I'm at the background like a deer in the headlights. So remarkable day. I think we ended up drawing that game, but old school rugby.
And then moving on from Wigan, kind of throughout your career, Huddersfield, Widnes, Warrington, Salford. Where do you feel you played your best football?
I learnt the game the most at Huddersfield under Nathan Brown. I have nothing but good memories at Huddersfield. We started off under John Sharp, and that was pretty good. But then I didn't realise consistency was something that I struggled in my game. I'd have a great game, but then I'd have a poor game, and I didn't know why, because I tried just as hard. But Nathan Brown taught me about principles of playing and playing for play, and it sort of broke it down into a game of chess, and having field position and low risk and high risk in the certain times that you do that. So really studied the game hard at Huddersfield, and then when I left, I think that's where, when I was at Widnes for 4 years, that I really played my best stuff. I got named in the dream team. Whenever I went on that field, I felt like I could have been the best player on the field, regardless who we were playing. I was so confident. Dennis let me play the style I wanted to play. and we had a team that was very well balanced and probably fought above the weight. We wasn't full of superstars, but we were consistently beating big teams. We beat Wigan with 11 men. We broke all the records at Widnes. We were in semi-finals and we were in the playoffs, and we were at the top of the league at Easter period. So everything was great, and that's I just thought consistently I was performing, and some of the stats that I look back now, I scratch myself and think I don't know how I would achieve some of the individual stats, but it was just a great place to play. But I enjoyed my time everywhere. I didn't go to one club and think, God, I wish I'd have got more out of that.
What earned you more grief, being a St Helens lad who wanted and went on to play for Wigan, or leaving Widnes to join Warrington?
It's not even close. Leaving Widnes and going to Warrington. I didn't realise at the time how much grief I'd get, and it's only now when I can tell the story that people sort of, I didn't realise, I wish I hadn't given you as much grief. But I was actually on holiday in Mexico. I was with Brian Hall. We'd just finished, I think it was a Four Nations in England. I'd gone to Mexico and we were having a drink, and I got a phone call off my agent, and he said, look, Widnes have agreed to release you. Warrington have come in and they're going to pay £250,000, and it's up to you. So I rang Dennis and I said, what's the go? Have I signed for Warrington, or am I signing for it? And he said, it's up to you. We've accepted the fee. We don't want you to go, or I don't want you to go, but the finances at the club suggest that this will be a good deal for the club. I was on a lot of money at Widnes as well, and ultimately it's it's probably about 400,000 with my wage and the transfer fee, what they would have saved that year. So they weren't pushing me, but I think they were happy when I did go. I was at an age where I didn't have long left. I went to Warrington, and I got so much grief. I didn't realise the grief that I was going to get. I left on great terms with all the players, all the coaches. Even James Rule, I left on great terms with James at the time. And when I went to Warrington, I didn't realise the grief. We played them in a Challenge Cup game first, and I scored 3 tries and we knocked them out, and that just riled them up even more. But I was desperate to perform because I felt like, I'd give everything for that club, and then I left them in a great position, and I thought, my job's done. But I couldn't tell the story because they made me sign an NDA at the time. The club's obviously gone bust since, so I can speak about it now. And it was difficult because I just wanted to say, look, I didn't want to go. I got a phone call. It wasn't me pushing this. But at the same time, I was excited to be at Warrington to try and get some silverware and be in the big games. So much stick, and it all got to the stage where I came off social media, and we played Widnes in the mid-eights at Widnes, and we needed to win. We desperately needed to win, and I remember it was Phil Bentham, the referee at the time. He came in and he had a word with me, and he said, look, we've had reports that they're going to storm the field and they're going to get to you, and if they do, you just run off and we'll abandon the game. And I was like, wow, this is too far. Never did I feel threatened or anything, but I thought this is a bit much. A referee, purposely coming in and talking to me about this. And then it got quite funny in the game. Peteriku had come over from New Zealand Warriors halfway through the season, and I had no idea what had gone on with me. And as the game was kicking off, I was standing there and I was waiting to give the ball to Ashton Sims, and closer to the fans was Peteriku. And then all of a sudden these rubber snakes just started coming on, inflatable snakes. So we was absolutely covered and surrounded by these snakes, and Petter had no idea what was going on, and he had no idea they were throwing them at me and they were hitting him. So we was picking them up and throwing them back in the stand, and ultimately we won that game, and I got out of there as quick as I could. I still get stick now, but I do try and speak. Most of the Widnes fans are brilliant. The Warrington fans have always been great, but yeah, it was a tricky period.
Kind of skipping a few years down the track, I'll take you to 2017. World Cup final. of that whole World Cup campaign, you'd kind of been sort of in and out of the England squad for a few years. Did you ever think you'd find yourself in that position playing in Australia for the World Cup?
No, at the start of my career, everything was great. I played for Wigan. I got talked about a lot. I got in squads, and I thought, the next progression is doing what I'd seen all my mates do, the older players like Gareth Thorpe, Danny Tickle, Terry Newton, Andy Farrell. So I'll do that. It's the natural progression. And then, obviously, it didn't happen. And I played in 2010 and didn't really do myself justice. Underperformed, and I was out for 7 years until a new coach came in. And when Wayne came in, I was playing at Widnes and I was playing really well. And I played against a couple of sides and performed well. And then we played against Brisbane in the World Club Series, and I got man of the match and we beat Brisbane. We were massive underdogs and Wayne was the coach. And he said to me after that game, he said, you need to bring that game every time you play for England, because if you do, we've got a chance. And he always spoke about the players in Australia and the disparity of players in England, and we need to pull our levels up to be like Sam Burgess and James Graham. And I completely got it, but it excited me. But I still didn't think I would play in a World Cup final or be in front of the likes of George Williams, Gareth Widdop, because Gareth Widdop was the captain over in St George. George Williams was a superstar in England and Australia, and I just thought I'd be there as backup. So I booked a flight for my wife and son to come out, but I said, look, you'll be coming out as a holiday. I probably won't play much, especially after the group stage. And when I played against France, Wayne said, look, take your spot. If you play well today, you'll hold it. And ultimately I played very well. We had a great win against France, and then that was it. Then he said, you're the player. The team plays better when you're in it. And I think my style were I let other players play. Gareth Widdop moved to fullback, which I don't know, the way he was playing as a six just wasn't working because it was a little bit quiet. And me and Gailey just hit it off and started performing, and that was it. Wayne backed me, and I never thought I would play as many games as I did in that World Cup at such an older age, but it was just a terrific ride, and one I just wish that there was a better outcome on the day, but again, we couldn't give any more.
Is that the one that keeps you up at night? Because it's still makes my skin crawl a little bit talking about it. With an ankle tap away, it's a bit of a cliche, and who knows what would have happened if that try had been scored. But in all my years, recent years of watching England teams against Australia, I'd kind of, despite myself, started to believe that it was happening that day.
Playing against Australia is hard when you're playing them in England. When you're going into their backyard at Suncorp Stadium, it's a different ball game. The humidity, the temperature, the crowd, but it's what we wanted, what we thrived on. Being complete backs against the wall and having a go is what it was all about. And it does keep me up at night, and it does grind on me the fact that we were so close. We didn't. If we'd have just scored 8 points, we'd win the World Cup final. We just couldn't break them down, and we were so. I watched that game back a couple of times, and Jermaine McGillivray goes in touch at the start of the game, and he's so close to scoring. Callum Watkins gets ankle tapped. There's so many defining moments, but that's what makes the Australians so good. I spoke with Cameron Smith and Cooper Cronk after the game, and I've watched them for years, and so much respect watching them in the Origin Arena and how hard them games are. And we always think, that is the pinnacle, that is the ultimate. And they both said that is the hardest game we've ever played. And then afterwards, they obviously came out in the media and doubled down on that and said how hard it was. So there's a lot of good feeling from that, but ultimately we were second best, and that is hard to take.
And then obviously you came out of that, finished up with Warrington, finished a career at Salford, and since then you've moved on from playing. You're still very much involved in the game. You mentioned kind of phone calls of your agents when you were going through transfers and that kind of thing. What do you get out of being on the other side of those calls now?
A good feeling. Sometimes it's good calls, sometimes it's difficult calls. But what I try and do, and what brought me passion about being an agent, I've seen that many players who were better than me and earned more money than me end up with nothing after they finish. And the big thing is for me and the agency I work for is life alongside and life after rugby. And if we can educate and push lads to start thinking of that, even at 17 and 18 when they're just starting, is something that makes me real proud that, when we shake an hand with a player who's, done a great deal, but also thinking about starting their own business or getting into property and not just thinking they've made it, because rugby league is a working man's sport. It's a wage that's great, but you're not going to be able to just sit on your backside for the rest of your life. So to educate players and young players especially of the pitfalls of doing that is something that I've got a lot of passion for and about, and it drives me every day.
And then in terms of, obviously you spent your career playing halfback. It's such a kind of fabled story position on the field. It's the quarterback of rugby league, isn't it? It's the focal point. What do you define the skill set required to be a good halfback?
You need to be a good communicator, and you need to be composed. I think if you're too quiet, you can still be a decent halfback, but the best halfbacks, you need to communicate and you need to make everyone else feel comfortable. You're basically your right-hand man of the coach. You need to deliver the messages in a way that everyone buys in on the field, because if you're pulling in a different direction from your coach, it doesn't work. If you're too aggressive with your actions and your communication, it doesn't work. But as well, if you just try and say what people want to hear, that doesn't work. So to get people in the right positions, and I learned so much off players like Adrian Lamb, who's a great coach, and Andy Farrell, Sean O'Loughlin, Brett Hodgson. And some of the stuff was building connections with people through the week, and it wasn't just about playing and talking to players. Sometimes dummy runners, so important that you hit dummy runners, because if you don't, they'll stop doing it as genuine. And when you want them to be genuine, they're running through as a dummy and they don't do anything to the defensive line. So just making and keeping them honest and giving them little treats every now and again and giving the ball, and doing the right thing on the field as well, because it's all right being vocal and being a good communicator, but if you're ultimately not performing well or you're not doing what you're asking the others to do, they'll start following you. So that was something that I always demanded of other players as a captain, as an halfback, that I demanded of myself. And if I wasn't doing it, I'd never be able to look anyone else in the eye and say, look, you need more effort, or you need to be in this position and you need to be a bit more genuine, if I'm not doing that myself.
How do you think that role's changed? Because the game's constantly evolving, so it would make perfect sense that the kind of the playmaker in the middle of that role's evolved as well.
Well, yeah, so I think it has. I think that's developed as a bit of a team now. It used to be your number 7 that did it all. Now we've got a hooker, a 6, and a fullback. I think the fullback's the big one that's developed. It used to be, you used to have an athlete at the back who was a great defender, and I look at some of the best fullbacks when I was starting, Chris Radlinski, Paul Wellens, they were terrific athletes who could make a one-on-one tackle, and defensively they were better than anyone. But I think the modern day fullback, the best fullbacks, your Reece Walsh, Billy Slaters, they've all got a pass, and they've all got, they're basically very, very athletic halfbacks. You look at Sam Tompkins, he's the same. Jack Wellesby, whether he's a 6 or a 1, it's really difficult to distinguish the difference, but that's where you've got that extra help. And then your hooker and your loose forward now, they're almost like your conduit between your middle unit and your edge and your outside backs. So you've got much more help, and that was something that, when I played for England was so easy. It was such a luxury, because, I had to communicate and pull everyone else in, but there was Josh Hodgson and James Roby at 9 who just sorted that. You'd say, sort that set, they'd sort that. And you could start speaking to other players, and you had Sam Burgess and James Graham as vocal leaders in the middle. But then your halfbacks, that was just something where you could just really concentrate on the real little details rather than trying to control everything. And I think that's where the game's evolved. All the best teams don't rely on one general. They'll have a spine, they call it the spine, the 1, 6, 7 and 9. And then often there's a couple of extra voices in there.
Who are the ones at the moment that are setting the pace, if you like, at halfback for you?
I think Lachlan Lamb. I think whenever I've watched him, he's composed, he's vocal. And his skill set, when he does something, he does everything at a great tempo, and he just looks like his execution he always picks. One player who I think's got much better is George Williams. He's always been a terrific player, but when he was at Wigan, he was stuck on the left edge, and he just did his little nuances of going down the edge, and he either put the kick in or the pass. When he went to Canberra, I feel he came out of his shell. He was on both sides of the field, and probably a bit like myself, where you go away and you learn how to play the game. When he's come back, he's much more vocal. He's obviously the England captain now. He's the Warrington captain, and he's just a player that everyone wants to play with. So, in terms of developing players, I think George is probably the best halfback that's come from a system where he's locked in. But for me, Lachlan Lamb, I think Lockie Lamb has been the best player in the competition. And yeah, I've known Lachlan since he's been a little child, coming to Wigan with his dad, kicking the ball around. So the player he's turned into, it's no surprise because of the brain that his dad's got and passed on to his son.
Finish this with a question that I've kind of finished all of this series with. It's a double-parter. First one is, if you had to kind of pick one moment as a real career highlight, what would that be? And the second part to it is, as you've kind of moved out of rugby league into the second stage of your career, if you like, if there's kind of one, whether it's a career thing or just a life kind of bucket list thing, if there's one thing to tick off that you want to achieve, what's that?
So the first question, the best moment, it's really difficult to split them, but I will. But I'll give you second place was my debut. Beating Saints, a full house at the JJB at the time at Wigan was just something that I'll never forget until my eyes shut and I go to sleep. But the best moment was the semi-final in Tonga. Playing in a semi-final for your country abroad is brilliant, but that night I have never witnessed anything even close. And anyone who was there knows the atmosphere, and not just in the ground, the people outside and the noise. I've never heard the noise and the emotion at the end of the game, because we did so well to get off to a lead. I think it was 24-0 or something like that, and then they came back with this wave of just sheer. There was hymns being played to get them going, and Jason Taumalolo started it off, and I remember tackling David Fafita and Elliot Whitehead coming over and knocking the ball out, and the whistle went and the referee walked off, and I was thinking, is he going to go to the screen? And when that moment went off and the fireworks went off and we were in the World Cup final, it was just something that I'd worked so hard for. I never thought I was going to get, but it just made, when I went to bed at night, I was rooming with Luke Gale and we were both just talking, going, we've made the World Cup final, and we've not done this, and we've got a chance of beating the Aussies, and we were genuinely like, we thought we could beat the Aussies. But that night, that day, the game, the intensity, the feeling of leaving it all out there and getting the win was the best moment of my rugby league career. In terms of bucket list, real difficult one to sort of think on the spot, Lewis. You've definitely put me on the spot here. I'd like to go to Australia and watch England win a World Cup. I think whether that can happen or not, but I'd just love England to win a World Cup. That is something that I thought we could do last year, and ultimately we fell short. But I really want England to win a World Cup, and I want to be there. And if possible, if that's in my lifetime, then that'd do for me.
Okay, thanks for your time. Thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Cheers.
I was pretty much the only girl that played, and when I joined the boys team, I was the only girl in the whole league that played. And I used to play with like a scrum hat on, and at the time I just tucked my hair in, and everybody assumed I was a boy anyway. So then, because they wouldn't think that a girl was playing, and then when I took my scrum hat off at the end, people were like, "Oh my god, that's a girl!" And people even like, "You can't have a girl playing for your team," because it was so like, out of the ordinary to have a girl playing at that time.